Onboarding users to Ethereum. It's a big topic, so we're gonna have to break up to a few videos. So for this video, we'll just do an overview, give you some resources to look into things further, give you some options, and hopefully a way to think about approaching this. So let me look at the list here. Okay, so first thing we'll do is we'll look at bringing users on who actually have an Ethereum address or setting them up with an Ethereum address. So it's probably option one. Metamask, granddaddy of Ethereum. Everyone in Ethereum knows Metamask. It's been around, it's proven. We have a lot of emerging solutions. So Portis is one that I've used. So that's one we'll look at. That allows you to have a centralized management of the user's keys, which has some negatives associated with it, but also gives the user an easier way to come onto their first account on Ethereum. Universal login, which looks at almost the best practices approach for the future. They're in beta now, but they're putting a lot of cool technologies together to make that happen. And then we'll look at an EthereumLess option, or a couple options, kind of EthereumLess in the sense that with metatransactions, we're on Ethereum, but the user doesn't need to know that. And then Loom, which is a layer 2 solution, we're using a lot of the Ethereum constructs, but we're on layer 2, so we can dance around the actual Ethereum account. Okay, let's see. So what do we want to happen? So what we've done in the past is we've had a user who's logged into MetaMask. They have their account on MetaMask. We have an ENS account for this. And then when they come on, we can see their ENS address and we can see their balance. What we want to happen is, or the situation we want to deal with is we have a new user. They've never heard of Ethereum, but we still want them to be able to use our app. So when they come to our app, we want to be able to onboard them. So one option is, these two options are with Ethereum. So they're going to have an Ethereum address. We're going to offer them 2 ways to create an Ethereum address. Another option, which we'll look at, is how do we deal with them not even knowing they're on Ethereum at all, ever, until they want to get an account to move tokens or something like that. Okay, so the first one we just looked at, so MetaMask, I like this little fox. This will allow them to get a Chrome extension and then install that, and then they can create their account. So in my opinion, it's an easy way to onboard, but it does require them to learn a bunch of things. And I mean, there's a comfort with what is a private key, what's an address. There's a whole bunch of things they need to get through. I mean, I think it's worthwhile if they want to live and breathe in Ethereum and actually put some money into an account. But I guess for the first steps, we have to consider whether we want to do that or not. So another option is Portis. So with Portis, it's a bit easier. So the user can create a login and a password on Portis. Portis will generate them an account and a key and a wallet. I'll just log in. Let's see if we can log in. I should log into the Dapp. Or try at least. So when they come onto our Dapp, it says, let's create a new wallet, a new account. So let's put our account. Oh, I don't know what my password is. Still doesn't work. Okay, there we go. So now we're logged into Portis. Okay, so when we go to the Portis app, so we logged in through our Dapp, and we go to their app here, it'll open our wallet, Portis.io. So we don't have any balance on this. We just wanted to log in. But this is an easier way for our users. They log in with that little window in our app, and then they come here, they have an option. So what we do is, if we're going to onboard straight to Ethereum, we offer a few options. So for beginners, we'll say try Portis. For more experienced, you can install MetaMask, but you imagine they would already have it if they're more experienced. Okay, so one thing to do probably if you're new to all this, onboarding users, is to have a look at this video. It's by Alex Van Zandt from DevCon 5, and he talks about universal login. He's one of the people behind universal login. But he provides an overview of users and onboarding them, and 3 or 4 main options, I think 3 options. So one option here actually is the Portis option. My dog's sleeping. The Portis option here is essentially you have a key that's stored in a centralized database, and there are negatives associated with that. One being it is a centralized database. So the Portis folks, they have a white paper, which is a really interesting read. It looks like they use browser-based encryption to encrypt your keys. Even though they store them for you, they don't have access to them. But I mean, you need to weigh those pros and cons of key management, the difficulty in managing the keys by the user versus the ease of onboarding them. Okay, so universal login, December 2019, they're still in beta. But if you're in 2020, you should take a hard look at their solution. So they're using ENS for the addresses, which is great. It makes it easier for the user to understand and use their address. They provide a way to easily onboard with fiat. They also encourage the users to create keys, or actually signatures. They use multi-sig type of wallets so that they encourage users to have their keys on multiple devices so that it's easier for them to restore those in the future should something happen. So this is very promising. It's a lot of ways it's bringing together a lot of the Ethereum technologies for the best practices approach for the future. We're still in beta. Hopefully they'll have a good, successful launch and they can scale up. Okay, so another area to look at is this EthereumLess area. So we had Metamask, Portis, universal login for right on Ethereum creation of accounts and addresses for the user. If we want to move a bit away and the user at first not to know that they're going to have an Ethereum address or not have to create one before they can start, which is a good usability option, but we want to still give them things. So we may want to give them tokens when they come on our site, when they do stuff. So MetaTransactions is a great option. MetaTransaction, essentially, you are going to pay the gas for your users. So when a user does something on your site, if they transfer tokens or they get tokens or they're doing anything, a lot of times if they do anything, they need to pay gas. So that can be a little bit difficult for UX in the sense that they need to sign a transaction. They're going to have a pop-up. They're going to have to create an account before they can do anything. So this site's great, metatransaction.io. Austin Griffiths has created a few videos and code examples that you can look at these concepts. So it's a good thing to know regardless. It's a good option to have in your pocket. So the bouncer proxy and delegated execution, you might as well watch all three, but that gives you a good background into what's necessary for MetaTransaction. So if you ever want to do a MetaTransaction-based approach, you can. So I'd also suggest after you watch that to go to OpenZeppelin. They have a bunch of stuff around GSN, the gas station network, which is a network of providers for managing MetaTransaction-based apps, essentially. So they give you a bunch of resources in terms of contracts and SDK, a starter kit. So the contracts are very similar to the contract you'd write with normal Ethereum. You'll inherit from their base contract, and nowadays they are providing the best practices-based contracts for ERC 20 and 721 contracts anyway. So this is not out of the ordinary. So there are some nuances with your contract. So you can't deal with message.sender like you normally would. You're going to call a function actually to deal with message.sender or message.data. And then the relay concept comes in. So this is where you're going to deal with proxies and relays. So here's a bouncer contract. So you'll have to go through this. It's at least worth understanding. And it's a really good option. So you want to stay in the Ethereum mainnet, this is a great option for you to do that. And they have an example Dapp. So you can, so here in a normal Dapp, let's just see. So for your counter, if you're going to increase the counter, you're going to have to sign a transaction and pay gas. So here you'd actually be able to just try this out, and then you'd be able to see that your proxy contract is going to pay the gas for your user. So they wouldn't actually even have to know that they are doing something on Ethereum. So they would just press a button and something would happen and they're done. So our last Ethereum option is Loom. So we've been using Loom all along. So some interesting ideas with Loom. So the user can come on, we could give them tokens. We could push those tokens onto the layer 2 Loom plasma chain. And then when they're comfortable, they want to withdraw their tokens, we can then use a gateway contract then to allow them to, however they want to create their Ethereum address, and then to pull those tokens that they were rewarded onto their main Ethereum address so they can have custody of those. So we'll go through that as well. So let me just see what I didn't cover. All right, so the next video, we'll look at onboarding. So with MetaMask, Portis, and at least a discussion of meta transactions and universal login. And the video after that, we'll look at Loom. So generating keys for the user when they come on. There's actually a key management challenge there. So we'll have to think a bit about mnemonics and even emoji mnemonics, which I really like. I got that from universal login. So they, instead of giving you mnemonic words or even a cryptic key, they give you a set of emojis that you can use to represent your key, which is great. So look at that as well. And then we'll look at how you would bridge Ethereum and Loom with gateways so that you can have the advantages of both.